Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 16 breakdown for the Top Cut Treasure Cup that happened this past weekend, and it's a really unique weekend where it is a format with the restriction list but without the new Star Deck 10 card. So it's literally this event and the Pasadena event, which I'm literally at right now. So we're going to go over these lists for this event, but one shout out to Top Cut for running the event. It was a 512 player event, 9 rounds of Swiss with, again, the new restrictions but without Star Deck 10 legal, which is pretty unique for that too. So going into this top 16, we do see 5 whole green purple Donquixote Doflamingos, which I think a lot of people thought was going to be good for this event, but it also won as well, but maybe not like the deck that people thought was going to be at least the best week 1 for this event. We have 3 Katakuris, which a lot of people thought would be the majority of this pie chart, but has not, not for this one. 2 Eustass Captain Kids, 2 Ace, which I think is very surprising, 1 copy of Crocodile, 1 Nami, 1 Zoro, and 1 Kin'emon. Also, I did get the top 32 list as well, so I did grab a couple unique of the X2. So we have a Queen, a Lucci, and Trafalgar Law that we're going to look at a little bit later. So we're just going to jump on into our first place list here. So this is Raymond's first place Donquixote Doflamingo, and this is a little bit more unique of a film, but it is still film. But the more you look at it, you realize it is more of a, I'd say, like aggressive or more like aggressive tempo or faster tempo, in the fact that I know we do play like the 3 drops and the Usopp as well as the Baccarat, and we also have the Brook that we're using for this as well. So we can use the Brook to play the Namis, the Baccarat, or the Usopp, which is really nice. So we still have like the Luffy into Brook into Baccarat or something like that as well. But also we're not playing any copies of the 10 drop Doflamingo, instead deciding that our top end is the Kaido. And honestly, I've been seeing a lot of people not use Donquixote Doflamingo. I did try it at the beginning of the format because I did feel that, it is a good card, but it's stuck in hand a lot of the time. We don't have a lot of ways to get rid of them either. So I do like Kaido. It is a strong card. It has Rush. Your opponent's not necessarily playing around it all the time, and a 6 or less does hit a lot of good cards as well. So I do like that. And then no copies of Guilds either. We're just playing Queen, so which means we can play Queen a little bit early because we're not as aggressively needing to get to 10 too, which is nice. And then also the 3 sword style Onigiri, so being able to be defensive but also be able to play a 5k from our hand is really nice. So I think this is a good card. We just have to leave 1 additional open, which is usually pretty easy for this deck, especially since again we're not playing the 10 drop. So this is a list for Raymond. Congratulations for their first place finish in this Treasure Cup. And then next up we have Takura with their second place Eustass Captain Kid, and this is kind of where we're at with this deck. I would say this is more kind of like an in-between build of a lot that I've seen. A lot of, this is a pile of supernovas and film cards and kind of what it is. So, there is a good amount of top end for green now. We do have the Luffy's, but also 1 copy of the Eustass Captain Kid and 3 of the Dofi, which is kind of nice, especially since, Kid does get a lot of pressure, and I'd say that this one sometimes is better at building just a taller board inherently. We are running more of the supernovas, so the body makes sense. It helps us find the killer. Our 2K, the 1 Bart we're running, Basil Hawkins, and X-Drake does get a lot of good value in a lot of decks too. Being able to play this on curve and be able to get rid of something that attacked last turn, I think is very strong, and just kind of the rest of the deck there. We do have 3 copies of Punk Gibson, which is, again, a little bit harder to leave 2 Dawn open for us compared to green-purple Dofi, but you are able to pitch it from your hand for your leader effect, which is really strong. So this is Takura's build. Congratulations there. And then next up we have Jacoby with their 4th place Ace, and they went into finals against green purple Dofi. So honestly, Ace is always a surprise for me because it always feels like it's the one that gets hit hardest on the restriction list, but specifically for this event, it's the best doing red deck for it. So obviously we lost another Marco. Some builds weren't playing like the Dodon package, and Nami wasn't necessarily in it, but 5-drop Marco is really strong for this deck, especially since we were able to keep it around so often. And then also this, but this is like looking like a super duper Whitebeard version of the deck. So we have, like, honestly, like if you didn't tell me who the leader was, I would say, and I didn't see like the Flame Emperor, I'd say this is just a weird version of Newgate, right? Which is really interesting. So we have our Otama Makino, we have our Izo, we have our Jozu's, Marcos, and then our 4-6 in the Atmos as well. We have our Rush, Luffy's, and Ace, which are strong, and I do think that it is kind of hard for this deck to generate a board, so being able to have these Rush cards are great, though they can be really stuck in this hand, specifically for how kind of Ace goes. And then the 3 Thatch, 1 Newgate, and then a bunch of events, but not really as much as we're used to seeing for Ace. Only 12. So Rad Beam, a Seaquake, 4 guard points, 3 Red Hawks, and 3 Flame Emperors. So a really interesting interesting build, one that I haven't really seen before. Again, it does super look like Newgate. You just switch the leader and add a Flame Emperor, but Newgate did very well for a long time, even though, part of it was it being a 6K. I do think Ace is still a very strong deck, and it's also really interesting, no copies of the Flame, like just like Fire Fist, of no Fire Fist, which is really interesting, because that's normally the case, though I will say that's better for Zoro and Law, and I think they're still present, but not as present as they used to be. So anyways, this is their list. Congratulations for their their 4th place for this event. And next up we have Katakuri. So this is Nicholas's 5th place list for the deck, and this is generically what we've been seeing. I haven't seen a lot of like differences with these. Some people do cut out the 5 and 6K vanillas for what it is and get a little bit greedier on the top end, and this is I would say looks very standard and even like pre-restriction list for what we're seeing for the deck. And that's not too surprising in the fact that yellow didn't really get hit at all, and yellow was doing pretty okay for the builds that they were running anyways. Though I would say that I would be, I think there is some room for like maybe a little bit of greed for some of these decks for just like a mid top end as well. We do run the Cracker, which has been kind of like off and on, I feel like, in a lot of decks. A really big decision point for a lot of people, and it does mean like you got to be a little bit more aggressive with your tempo, because it just means there's another card with trigger in your life. And I do think like this card was really, really bad into Newgate, because you never got its effect, and then as a 5K, which meant you have to invest more Dawn into it anyways. But other than that, it's just kind of what we've been seeing. Nothing too spicy. I will say, I think Katakuri is strong, and I haven't made like, a lot of people ask me to make like when am I making the 10-drop Linlin means to get that banned and are restricted or whatever, and honestly I'm not seeing it yet still for this meta. I think that it is strong, but it's still very momentum based and and also just casino based. But I don't know, like I'm in Pasadena literally right now. We'll see what this event is looking like for a top 32, but honestly I think a lot of it is just based on literally how many people are in the playing. It's statistically difficult for it to not top at the same time. So anyways, this is the list there. Congratulations to Nicholas for their finish there. Then next up we have our starter deck, Crocodile. So this is Zachary's build of it, and it's kind of what we've been seeing a little bit. We do usually see the Santanello package in this deck, just because we want to be able to get some ways, like, the difference between Crocodile and Dofi is that they kind of have different packages on how you generate that extra card advantage. Dofi from playing off the top of the deck, and usually Crocodile uses Santanello because it's just a generic way to do it. So not too surprising. I have been seeing more copies of Zeph in blue, and even in person in this weekend. I think that's very strong for it. And then also the Soga King at 3 copies. Most of a lot of decks are really, again, tempo based, and so being able to use Soga King to kind of match your opponent's tempo or kind of screw them up, I think is great. And when we don't have a 6K Newgate around anymore, like a 6K means that you need to invest Dawn into trying to trade into this, and most times most people want to just spend all of their Dawn to play, on 7 Dawn they play their 7 Dawn card kind of stuff. So being able to kind of interact with that, I think, is just very strong and helps you out. Other than that, we do have our 3 Mihawks, 3 Kaidos, which is a little bit greedy with this card, but I do think is in a really good spot for this meta as well, so not too difficult, especially since we're also running Kaido and Gum Gum Rain to help us get us out of our hand. We have the 3000 Worlds, we have the Gum Gum Red Rock, and a single copy of Sables, which is just the removal from the starter deck. I haven't seen this card in a minute, but it is still really strong, and the trigger off of life, just return a 7 or less to opponent's hand, is pretty nutty as well. So anyways, this list here for our Croc player Zachary, congratulations for their finish. Next up we have Randy with their copy of Nami, and honestly, this is still just the same build of Nami. I was really kind of hopeful that there were going to be different builds trying to adjust to the meta, but I will say this is a tried and true deck, and it makes sense why people are still running it. I do think that, down the line, if we had more time than a month to develop the meta, there would probably be a different build of Nami to accommodate the changes for it as well, but still a strong deck, not much to talk about, and congratulations to Randy for their finish there. Next up we have Zoro, so a little bit down the line, 8th place with this one, and this is Charlie's build for it. And obviously you lose a lot. I would say that Zoro used all 3 cards pretty consistently, of the Nami, the Dodon, as well as the Marco, and you're still playing the Marco, but and you're kind of just, I think, doubling down on being more of a Whitebeard and Buggy kind of build for it. So not everyone used the Nami build for it, but you definitely used the Dodon because you have, as you see, so many 1-drops in it, and just in fact that like Otama is not searchable, I think, does lower the power level for it and Law, because that was such an important card for the deck. But most people, I think, for Marcos, they kind of went into the Marshall D Teaches, which kind of makes sense for it. Being able to be get that card draw and pressure is kind of nice. A 4/6 on curve feels good too. And then like the buggy kind of event package still makes sense. We still have our our good amount of events. We have 13, which is usually around the standard, usually between 12 and 14 I usually see for it. But kind of just doubling down on the rush cards, because I don't think Rush Zoro was always added when Dawn was in play, but you do need that extra pressure, and I think that kind of makes sense for it. So this is the build here for our Zoro player. Let me double check Charlie, and then that, yeah, congratulations for your finish there. Next up we have Will to win with Kin'emon, and I've been seeing this pop up. I did run an event before this weekend. That was kind of like a test event for 4.1 is what I've been calling it, and Kin'emon did win that 64-player event, which is really cool. And this is a really cool build, and honestly, what this deck really turns into is like protect or respect the Yamato, and the fact that this is such a good card to pressure down your opponent. Double attack and banish gets you so much. If this is able to hit, like, you get so much advantage for it, especially against yellow, which really wants to hit those triggers in life as well. Being able to do that, I think, is just really strong for the deck. And so if you're able to see this, which you're able to see this, turn 2 with your Kin'emon effect, and then kind of catch your opponent off guard or make them discard a lot of cards to get out of it. Like, you just have to answer this card, which makes it very strong. So kind of support around that. We do have some ways to rest your opponent's cards, like Okiku, which, again, like Okiku turn 2 or turn 1 into Yamato turn 2 is very strong against a lot of decks. The 4-drop Yamato is very good for being able to get the additional rest on stuff as well. We have the Toki, which is our blocker for everything, and we need to kind of go from there. Like, that blocker is really, really nice for it. And then we Izo can get some rest. We have our killer blocker, and then top end we just have the 7-drop Eustass Kid, which is kind of neat. It's a blocker from starter deck 1 or starter deck 2, the first wave of them. And being able to be like an attack and be able to get the defense is really nice for it. It is kind of removal, like Red Rock against this feels kind of bad, but other than that, I think it's good. I think, in the sense that it's like Kin'emon, best case you'd play it for 8, 8 to 7. Like, this is the same thing, and if you're worried about removal, you've spent like 1 less, and it's a blocker. So I think that kind of makes sense for it. And then 4 of the 10-drop Donquixote Doflamingos, which is, again, very strong at kind of stunning down and getting like another turn at times. So that's the list here for Will, and congratulations for their top 16 there. And then our 3 builds in the top 32 that were unique. We've got Queen from Edward here, and this is, honestly, I don't think Queen is doing as well into this meta. I think that it did probably do better with Red around, especially since Newgate was, I would say, one of its better matchups across the board. And either like Katakuri just got too much life burn if they see their big bombs, or like something like Film Kid is this a little bit too fast and has too many attacks to kind of deal with. I think all of that's kind of impactful for it. But this does have a couple of unique cards for it. We are running like the Perona, which is a bit of a decision, and the Kaya, but also we're running like the Sanji and the Soga King and Crocodile. Like, the Crocodile vanilla is really interesting. It's just a 5/7, but being able to play this on curve and have something to help bully down some other cards, I think, is great, because your big issue is that you do sometimes have to spend all of your turn just to be able to play one of your 8 or 9 drops and then use the Queen effect. So I think that is kind of a way just to get that additional pressure. It does get hit by like Thunderbolt and 3000 Worlds, so that's kind of stinky, but I think that is kind of still worth the ad there. And then everything else is kind of the same. We're running the Boa Hancock, which I've been seeing kind of just pop up at like 2 copies of every once in a while. It is a blocker, which is nice, and it does have a way to draw cards, which you don't necessarily feel like you need to do with Queen, but just having additional cards and being able to attack with it and draw. Just everything else, I think, is powerful in its own way. So you just have to kind of sequence it right and everything. But another blocker that does have a good effect, I think, is worth its time to be kind of in this Queen deck as well. So anyways, this is the build here for Edward, and congratulations for their 20th place there. And then next up we have our Rob Lucci. And I'm really happy to see Rob Lucci get a top 32 finish. I've been testing it a little bit, and this is a bit of a unique build. And by unique, I mean like super duper CP9 version of the build. Normally I kind of see like a hybrid or more of a Navy focus, but this is 100% just part of like the CP9 version of it, with not only like 4 copies of the Air Door and 4 copies of Jobber, which Air Door and a Jobber is still like a really good combo, and especially with Newgate not around, I think it gets like a lot of mileage a lot of the time. But we're also playing 4 copies of the 6/7 Rob Lucci Rush card, which generally I don't see play, but I do think a 7k that can attack is still very strong for it. The cost doesn't really do anything for us either. So like it's a non-trivial cost when we play Air Door. So I think that is strong for the deck, and it can be really helpful. And then just all these CP9 cards. So we know our trash is going to be filled with them very quickly for that. We have 3 copies of barriers as well, just if we need some extra defense. I did find that, like, you know, inherently you did want to run this card, but it was also really tricky to actually get to 15 without actually like literally trying for it. So it's a little bit tricky to get this into like rad beam ranges, but being able to have a 1 cost that can turn into a 4K is really good. And like the trigger in life is really good to get that draw 2 trash 1. So I think that's fine for it as well. But this list here for Luis, congratulations for their top 32 with the Rob Lucci. And our last deck of the day, we do have the Trafalgar Law, which is, you know, what a, you know, usually it's the first deck and it's the last one we're talking today. But this is Norman's list for the event. And this is running the Wano package. And honestly, I've been talking to a lot of people with, you know, where do we go from here for Trafalgar Law? What's the next best package for it? Where, you know, is it Whitebeard? Is it the Wano package? Is it like something else? Like, is it film package? I've been seeing a lot of people talk about it, and I think this is an interesting build. This is like a triple package of Momo, Bonnie, and Izo all being our searches, which I do think can run into some inconsistencies because of it, but there are a lot of good cards. Like Flamenco is really good at kind of trading into pieces and also getting things into Vista range, which is really nice. Our Yamato, which we're sneaking in, is a good card for like getting some advantage, and it's a 6K, which is just a good body in general. Our Zoro, our Marco, we're running one of these because we can technically Trafalgar Law into it, which is really nice. And then just we're only running one of the 5/6 Trafalgar Law, so I feel like we do probably whiff a little bit often with our Bonnie searches, but we were also running Punk Gibsons to kind of facilitate that too. So a really unique build, a little bit wonky, a little bit of a pile of just cards with certain names, and I'm not sure how the consistency works with this all the time, but it looks really unique, and just a big congratulations to Norman for their top 32 there as well. So that is going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you guys want to see gameplay of this current format, I'm going to be streaming the final couple rounds on my Twitch and YouTube today, so make sure to check that out with Risu and Human, and then also thank you for Topcat for giving these deck lists. They're on my website, and that's going to be it for me. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.